Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Peace and blessings of Allah be upon you and the mercy of Allah. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. I seek refuge by way of Allah from shaitan, the rejected enemy. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Begin with Allah's name, the merciful benefactor, the merciful redeemer. Welcome to the Words Make People podcast. My name is Hassan Shabazz. This is a continuation of our series, Islam, Patriotism, and New World Order. Please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, share the video, and consider taking out a membership. Membership perks are access to new videos, access to the book club, access to discounts on publications. We have publications by Imam Mujaddid Muhammad, coming from the language, like, and reason of Imam Mujaddid Muhammad, as well as publications dealing with all ranges of Islamic understanding. So, take out a membership, enjoy the perks. As I say, you have first deals on new videos that are produced. If you haven't checked out the previous podcasts, I encourage you to check out those podcasts. It will give you a clear understanding of what we are talking about and what we're dealing with. Those podcasts can be found on the YouTube channel. First podcast I would suggest you check out is Al-Islam, the Undiscovered Country, and that's the beginning of the series on the Book of Revelations. This is a ongoing look at the Book of Revelation from the Holy Qur'an, the prophetic hadith of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, blessings and prayers be upon him, and the language, logic, and reasoning of Imam Mujaddid Muhammad, rahimahullah alayhi, may Allah's mercy be upon him. So this is an ongoing series. So if you want to know the beginning and what we're leading up to, then I would advise you check out the podcast, Al-Islam, the Undiscovered Country. And then after that, check out the next podcast in the series. We're going by chapters in the Book of Revelations. Al-Islam, the Undiscovered Country, deals with chapter 1, 2, and 3. And then we go on and we build on that. So without further ado, we're going to begin our podcast today. And our podcast today is entitled Wars. Wars, 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 and rumors of wars. That's all throughout Scripture. Wars, wars, wars. So the controlling of the economy and the perpetual robbery of wealth is only one component of the beast. If you want more information on that, check out the podcast before this podcast, where we deal with usury and we deal with how the beast, Dajjal, the forces of materialism, they use money or controlling of material wealth to control society. Repeating, the controlling of the economy and the perpetual robbery of wealth is only one component of the beast. The next tool is war. Wars, in addition to the obvious wounds, death, and dismemberments of countless numbers of soldiers, civilians, other forms of life, and various and sundry infrastructures inevitably degrade the freedom, liberty, and civil rights of everyone. The War of Independence started because King James III outlawed the interest-free independent currency produced and used by the original 13 colonies. This forced them to borrow money from the Central Bank of England, which put them into debt, and debt equals slavery. President John Adams stated, "Fear is the foundation of most governments." John Adams also states, "Democracy, while it lasts, is more bloody than either aristocracy or monarchy." Remember, democracy never lasts long. It soon wastes, exhausts, and murders itself. There is never a democracy that did not commit suicide. Pausing, looking at John Adams' quote, we're at the precipice of the cusp of this event happening in our current society. Democracy is on her last leg. There was a very potent song by Gil Scott-Heron called "Winter in America." And he gives a very powerful look at what is going on today. We're at the cusp of losing our democracy because there's forces in America who want to have an authoritarian monarch-like government. And we'll deal with that more as we get to chapter 18 of this look at the book of Revelations. So, our democracy at the moment is on the cusp of committing suicide. Now, John Adams also states, the fundamental law of the militia is that it be created, directed, and commanded by the laws and ever for the support of the laws. John Madison, the fourth president of the United States, recognized the problem in part when he wrote, and I quote, "Of all the enemies to public liberty, war is perhaps the most to be dreaded, because it comprises and develops the germ of every other. War is the parent of armies. From these proceed deaths and taxes, and armies and deaths and taxes are the known instruments for bringing the many under the domination of the few. In war, too, the discretionary power of the executive is extended. Its influence in dealing out offices, honors, and emoluments is multiplied, and all the means of seducing the minds are added to those of seducing the force of the people. There is also an inequality of fortunes and the opportunities of fraud, growing out of a state of war and degeneracy of manners and of morals. No nation could preserve its freedom in the midst of continual warfare." End of quote. Before we move on, just know that scenario is playing out in 2025. We've had perpetual wars. America has been at war with someone or something, some power, since the 1950s. We were either in a Cold War or we were in a hot, heated war. We were in a war against drugs. We were in a war against something. America has always been in a perpetual state of war. Now we're supposed to be in a war against illegal immigrants with a president who wants to enact the Insurrections Act so he can grab more power, so he can become an authoritarian ruler. In America, democracy would have committed suicide because we are the ones who are killing American democracy. There are no outside forces that are killing or strangling American democracy. American democracy is being strangled and killed by the citizens who are in power. They are the ones who are the oligarchs, or the super rich. They are the ones who are under the influence of material greed. They are collectively the Jacobites, or the Illuminati, because they are the ones who are being used to destroy America from the inside. So America is committing suicide. It's on a suicide track unless help comes. Now, moving on. We want to look at World War One. World War One cost 323,000 American lives and about $30 billion in 1919, which is equal to about $400 billion in 2008. So just imagine how much it's worth equal to in 2025. J.D. Rockefeller made over $200 million off of it in 1919, which is equal to $2.7 billion in 2008. The attacks on Pearl Harbor by the Japanese caused the United States to enter World War II. And in this war, the Rockefeller family was able to make even more money. Nazi Germany's war efforts were financed for the most part by I.G. Farben, and the American war effort was financed by American corporations like United States Standard Oil, which was owned by, you guessed it, J.D. Rockefeller and family. Big business funded both sides of the war. Quoting from Britannica Consular Encyclopedia, it states, I.G. Farben is the world's largest chemical cartel from its founding in Germany until its dissolution by the Allies after World War II. It grew out of a complex merger of German manufacturers of chemicals, pharmaceuticals, and dyestuffs. Its major members were the companies known today as BASF AG, also Bayer AG, Hochschild AG, Agfa Gewalt Group, and Castelar AG. They formed a loose association in 1916 and were formally united in 1925. With headquarters in Frankfurt, I.G. Farben expanded internationally in the late 1920s and in the 1930s. During World War II, it established a synthetic oil and rubber plant at Auschwitz to take advantage of slave labor by the death camp's inmates, on whom it also conducted drug experiments. After the war, several company officials were convicted of war crimes, and I.G. Farben was broken up into 3 independent companies. That's a quote from Britannica Consular Encyclopedia. President Dwight D. Eisenhower warned the country of the possible pitfalls of war profiteering on January 17, 1961, in his farewell address to the nation. In this address, which is now called his military-industrial complex speech, he stated, and I quote, "In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist. We must never let the weight of this combination endanger our liberties or democratic processes. We should take nothing for granted. Only an alert and knowledgeable citizenry can compel the proper meshing of the huge industrial and military machinery of defense with our peaceful methods and goals, so that security and liberty may prosper together." End of quote. That's a quote from former President Dwight D. Eisenhower. The military-industrial complex is generally defined as a coalition consisting of the military and industrialists who profit by manufacturing arms and selling them to the government. The United States did not have an armaments industry until World War II, according to President Eisenhower. President Eisenhower was warning against the military-industrial complex as part of the warnings of the beast, Jacobite, Dajjal, system by other presidents and leaders over the years. For example, President George Washington warned against unnecessary foreign entanglements. All of the mechanisms of the beast will be spurred by the military-industrial complex under rules of national and international security. Now let's look at Revelation chapter 18, verse 17. "In 1 hour, this great wealth has been ruined. Every captain of a ship, every traveler at sea, Sailors and seafaring merchants stood at a distance and cried out when they saw the smoke of her fire. What city could compare with this great city? They threw dust on their heads and cried out, weeping and mourning, Alas, alas, great city in which all who had ships at sea grew rich from her wealth. In 1 hour she has been ruined. Okay, let's look at Revelation chapter 18, verse 17. Now, the burning in 17th verse of Revelation chapter 18, I believe, is the burning of the United States Constitution and the Bill of Rights by the neoconservatives on the aftermath of the attacks on American soil by so-called Islamic terrorists on September 11, 2001. The destruction of the Twin Towers and the attack on the Pentagon on 9/11 has ushered in a sequence of events that will lead to the fall of America. The destruction of America will come through the destruction of the institutions that make America, America. For example, the uniqueness of our Constitution, the Bill of Rights, as previously mentioned, in our free market capitalist economy. Unfortunately, the destruction of America will come from inside, not outside. The attacks that are often referred to as 9/11 consist of a series of coordinated terrorist suicide attacks by so-called Islamic extremists upon the United States of America. 19 terrorists affiliated with Al-Qaeda hijacked 4 commercial passenger jet airliners and intentionally crashed 2 of the airliners into the World Trade Center in New York City, 1 plane to each tower, resulting in the collapse of both buildings soon afterward and irreparable damage to nearby buildings. The hijackers crashed a 3rd airliner into the Pentagon in Arlington County, Virginia, near Washington, D.C. Passengers and members of the flight crew on the 4th aircraft attempted to retake control of their plane from the hijackers. That plane crashed into a field near the town of Shanksville in rural Somerset County, Pennsylvania. In addition to the 19 hijackers, 2,974 people died. Another 24 are missing and presumed dead. The victims were predominantly civilians. This is taken from Wikipedia and other sources. Now, it is possible that rogue forces within the United States government killed over 2,000 American citizens? Was 9/11 a false flag operation? Is it possible that, as stated previously, criminal elements within the United States government staged a false flag terror attack on its own citizens in order to manipulate public opinion and perception into supporting their agenda? In the first hour of the attack on the Twin Towers, all of the news agencies, NBC, Fox, ABC, CBS, and CNN, intimated that the towers fell as if they had been set off by a demolition team. At least 6 of the so-called hijackers are alive, and no evidence has ever linked any of the dead or alive hijackers to Osama bin Laden. Just something to think about. Not trying to be a conspiracy theorist, but all you need is 1 or 2 rogue elements. It's not saying the whole government was a part of it, but all you need is 2 or 3 people to go crazy, and they can do some serious damage. Now, former President George Herbert Walker Bush, a member of the Carlyle Group, which is connected to the bin Laden family, just happened to be meeting with the bin Ladens on September 11, 2001. On the morning of 9/11, Vice President Dick Cheney is believed to have been in charge of NORAD operation. Just like there was an anti-terror exercise on the day of 9/11, there also were anti-terror exercises on July 7, 2005, and on July 7, 2005, 3 trains and a bus killing 56 people were bombed by terrorists in London. Coincidence maybe, or maybe not. It is believed by many that 9/11 was a false flag operation set up to mobilize the people's emotions to a point where funds could be acquired to mobilize a new level of imperialism in America. For example, number one, since September 11, 2001, military spending has increased by $100 billion a year in the United States of America. Number two, that all the Bill of Rights has been subverted. Number three, two preemptive wars killing over 800,000 civilians as of 2007 have been waged, and unfortunately, this is only the beginning. Now, for more information, you can look at a report called False Flag Prospecting. This report was given in 2008. The top 3 United States target cities by Captain Erie H. May. Okay? Now, I have a link to that, inshallah, God willing. False flag operations are covert operations conducted by governments, corporations, or other organizations, which are designed to appear as though they are being carried out by other entities. The name is derived from the military concept of flying false colors, that is, flying the flag of a country other than one's own. False flag operations are not limited to war and counterintelligence or counterinsurgency operations, and have been used in peacetime, for example, during Israel's strategy of tension. Now, it's more likely we are dealing with a false flag right now. Using the border, saying that the border is being overrun, America is being overran by foreign entities, that the American border is being overran by immigrants. In many cases, a false flag because they're over exaggerating. So they're making it's an issue, but they're making the issue way more than it really is. So yes, false flag operations are being run on American citizens all the time. You would think that Washington would be concerned when the tallest building in the biggest city in the country was destroyed, and when the very headquarters of its own defense establishment, an establishment that cost taxpayers trillions to maintain, was attacked. They would have investigated why that military failed to stop people who purportedly could barely even fly private craft, let alone commercial jets, and there would have been court-martialed for the people responsible for the nation's defense. A handful of arrows managed 4 times in one morning to outwit not merely the CIA and FBI, but all 16 United States intelligence agencies. All intelligence agencies of our allies, including Mossad, the National Security Council, State Department, NORAD, Air Traffic Control, and Airport Security. And you would think the President, Congress, and the media would have demanded to know how such an improbable event could have occurred. 60 years ago, President Eisenhower forced Britain, France, and Israel to stop their attack on a Muslim country. At that time, America's stock in the Middle East could not have been higher. We have kept hundreds of thousands of Arabs and Muslims who were innocent of what happened on that fateful day, and to throw up their country, once the most prosperous in the Middle East. The government's account of what happened on 9/11 is the reason given for an attack on Iraq. It is the foundation for wars in the Middle East, which are exhausting our resources and ruining our reputation. The allegation that Arabs or Muslims are responsible for 9/11 is the basis for the loss of our civil liberties and the creation of a domestic police state, which will shut down all opposition to wars and detain and torture anyone, the government in secrecy, and without any opposition from defense lawyers or anyone else wishes to target, regardless of how much of a threat they really pose to us. This is not the government for which my ancestors, including the ones who signed the Declaration of Independence, fought. So, the tensions, the policies that began after 9/11 are the reason that we are headed toward authoritarianism right now. That fueled in the American people a sense of fear. filled in the American people a sense of isolation, filled in the American people a sense that the government had to have more power, more control to protect us, the citizens, from the world. So now we have leadership in office that is preying on that lack of self-confidence in American citizenship. They are preying on the fear in the American citizenship. So we are moving head on to authoritarianism. Some say as soon as April the 20th, we will be an authoritarian state. Some say that the Insurrections Act will be enforced by April the 20th, 2025, giving the government unlimited access to spy on every American citizen. So we have to be aware. If we want to keep a democracy, we have to be aware of the forces that want to destroy democracy. And the force of materialism, the Dajjal, is against democracy. Don't think that the Dajjal and the Jacobites, the Illuminati want democracy. They don't. Now let's move to a subtitle: What is terrorism? Terrorism has been defined as a technique used by governments to manipulate public opinion in order to further an agenda. Was 9/11 used to further an agenda? If so, whose agenda? Ex-chief of the Los Angeles and Memphis FBI operations, Ted Gunderson, is of the belief that CIA is behind most of the terrorist attacks involving America. He is of the opinion, that is, that the following events were all false flag operations carried out by the CIA. He claims that the 1983 Beirut Marine Barracks bombing was one, the 1993 bombing of embassies in Kenya, the 1988 bombing of Pan American Flight 103, the October 12, 2000 bombing of the USS Cole, the April 19, 1995 federal building bombing in Oklahoma City. Number 6, the bombing of the World Trade Center in 1993. And 7, the World Trade Center attack 9/11 in 2001. It is believed by some that the FBI carried out an attack on the World Trade Center in 1993, but since only 6 people were killed, that was not enough to pass the Patriot Act or an equivalent law. So in 1995, they blew up the federal building in Oklahoma, which killed 168 people. But unfortunately, that still was not enough to cause the mass outrage needed to pass a bill equal to the Patriot Act. Although it was bad enough to warrant some anti-terrorism legislation, which took away some of our constitutional rights and civil liberties. In an April 1st, 1975 article by the Balaji News, Muslim journalist Salim Muwakkil wrote the following concerning terrorism. He wrote, and I quote, "The population of this planet is growing while its resources are shrinking, and people in the United States are changing their attitudes toward death. They are as sociologists say, losing their reverence for life." Later this article, he said, most children in the United States are provided 10,000 television murders by the time they reach 17. Life is apparently losing its importance here, and many experts believe it is that change of attitude that is manifesting the current and peculiar brand of United States terrorism. 20 years ago, said FBI behavior scientist Patrick Malani, quote, "No one would have thought killing someone or taking hostage was a viable action for whatever was bothering you. But people see that reality every night in TV dramas," end of quote. Terrorism itself is hardly a United States phenomenon, though, nor is it new. It has long been utilized as a tactic by those with little power and large grievances to even the balance. However, it was codified and philosophically justified by European theorists. In the 1890s, in America and Europe, many leading statesmen were assassinated. In 1884, a book by Johannes Moss, a German social democrat turned anarchist, entitled Revolutionary Urban Warfare, philosophical revolutionary urban warfare, philosophically argued in favor of terrorism. Though usually associated with the left wing, terrorism is ideologically interchangeable. He further states, ironically, terrorism is a particular dilemma that primarily affects democratic societies. Totalitarian regimes allow terrorists no leverage. For democracy, the dilemma is how to preserve individual freedom and liberty and yet at the same time maintain security for a diverse population. Also, terrorism provides those with a less civil libertarian view of society the excuse they need to clamp down on civil liberties. For example, United States citizens no longer grumble so loudly on long airport lines where their luggage must be checked for weapons. Such surveillance techniques, spawned by the spate of airplane hijackings during the 1960s, are taken for granted by most air travelers, and thus 20th century life has become a bit more totalitarian. End of quote. Now, look at a quote by Webster Tarpley, a famous historian. He states, it seems that the entire ruling elite have come to see terrorism as the only means to provide social cohesion, to provide an enemy image for the society to keep it together. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad, Mr. Elijah Muhammad, in his 1974 book, Our Savior Hath Arrived, states, and I'm going to quote a part of that book. He states, and I quote, in the fall of ancient Babylon, Jeremiah chapter 50, verse 46, says, at the noise of the taking of Babylon, the earth is moved, and the cry is heard among the nations. Here the Bible teaches us, and we see today, at the fall of the old world, there's a great noise of war, the fighting of war, the destruction of nations, towns, and cities, and the killing of their citizens. There is disagreement and confusion of the heads of nations. It is a very dreadful time that the populations of the earth are now living in. This is the time of the destruction of a world. It is not to be compared with the destruction of an organization or a few towns as it was in the days of Noah. The destruction today is the destruction of a whole world. The prophets could not have given us a better picture of what we may expect today than the picture of what took place in the fall of ancient Babylon. The earth, land, and sea are set in battle array. Every type of deadly weapon is fashioned and is now being used against man and man. See the Holy Qur'an, chapter 30, verse 41. There cannot be any peace for man under these conditions. End of quote. That's taken from a book, Our Savior Hath Arrived by Mr. Elijah Muhammad. First released in 1974. So that's the end of our broadcast for today. Please like, subscribe, take out a membership. And until next time, may God be with you. May God protect you from the coming hour. And if you keep faith in Allah, if you're Muslim, if you're not Muslim, if you're Christian, keep faith in God. And if you're not Christian or Jew, whatever you are, keep faith in a higher power and trust in that higher power. And try to do right, try to do good. Because goodness, while deception, evil is on the rise, goodness is also on the rise. So you want to be with those who have good energy, have good vibrations. So until next time, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. We're out.